This is the Triumph Street Twin, and in this video we're going to give it a full review.
So this bike starts at £8,100. You've got three different colour options. You've got red, black and ironstone, which this is in ironstone. We really like this colour. It's matte, of course, and it's kind of like a greyish brown. You get a little bit of brown tinge to it. It's more grey than it is brown, but it's a very nice colour. And of course, with a lot of the Triumphs, there's lots of optional extras, lots of specs that you can do. So it's up to you what you do on that side of things.
Now, the Triumph Street Twin is the most popular of all the modern classics in the Triumph Bonneville range, and I can see why, because it's a nice bike to ride and it looks pretty cool too. It's fairly easy to ride, so if it's your first bike after passing your test, you'd be fine with it, as long as you take it easy at first, because it is quite powerful, and we're going into all the power figures in a minute.
So the power figures for this bike, it produces 65 PS, which is 64.1 brake horsepower, or 47.8 kilowatts at 7,500 RPM, or it also produces 80 Newton meters of torque at 3,800 RPM. But this bike feels more powerful than it might suggest on paper because of how responsive it is, and it even feels more powerful than a bike that on paper is more powerful than this.
Now, I must say I really do like this 900cc Bonneville engine. It's a beautiful engine. It's got plenty of torque. It pulls from low revs. You can rev it to the maximum and it really does shift. Yeah, if you want to just burble around slowly in the country lanes or around the town, it's perfectly fine. So it does everything, and it does everything really well.
So, like a lot of the other Triumph models, this has got the USB port under the seat. You just put the key in the side here, and then you can pull the seat off like that, and then the USB is there. I think the USB would be better off up here, maybe on the headstock, so that you could have your phone on the bars as your sat-nav and have it plugged in. I think that's going to be a bit of a nuisance having it there.
As with all these Triumphs, the gearbox is very good. It's easy to change. It goes up and down the gearbox, silky smooth, no problems whatsoever. So I'm 6'3". This is the riding position for me. And with the seat being relatively flat, you can move back a little bit if you need to, and you can move forward depending on what you're doing. But my legs are quite bent, if you can see. So the angle of my legs, I would prefer to be about there. And as I said, Triumphs are much more designed for people under 6 feet tall. Obviously I can ride it, it's not a problem. But visually the bike probably looks quite small underneath me. But there's plenty of reach from my shoulders to my hands. So in this dimension it's okay, but it's more short in the other dimensions.
So the seat height on this bike is 760 millimeters. And again, I am 6'1" or 2". The bike feels a little bit small, but it's perfectly, you can ride it at over 6 foot, it's fine. But as the old man said, it's definitely designed for someone who's under 6 foot, because you are quite cramped up like that, but it's not too bad. You got 10,000 miles service intervals on this bike, and you can get an A2 license kit for this to bring it down to the 47 horsepower requirement of the A2 license. We haven't ridden one with that kit on it, but I think it wouldn't be too underpowered for the bike. I think it would be able to handle it perfectly well, and it'd still be a nice bike to ride.
Now this has an 18-inch front wheel, a 17-inch rear. The wheelbase is 1,415 millimeters. The rake is 25.1 degrees and the trail is 102.4 millimeters. All those dimensions combined give you the typical Triumph handling, which is very, very sharp, and it steers ever so quickly and changes direction ever so easily. So as we said in the previous video of the Triumph Scrambler, if you've got the cruisers at this end, you've got the Triumphs at that end. So your cruisers like your BMW R18 and your Harley Davidson Breakout are your stable, raked out bikes with the forks like that rather than like that. And think of those as your Shire horse. At the other end of the scale, you've got your Triumphs and your racing bikes, and they're much more faster steering, more like a squirrel. It changes direction like that. So a lot of people love that sort of handling, and if you like fast steering bikes that you can lay into the corners and fire around, it's absolutely perfect.
So the Street Twin's got a 900cc liquid-cooled parallel twin with a 5-speed gearbox, and you've got your radiator at the front. And the mud guards aren't that big, so if it's wet and a little bit muddy like today, you find the bike is covered in mud. The engine's covered in mud, and again with the rear, it's covered in mud. But that's one of the things that happens with small mud guards. If you had big mud guards, it would protect the bike more, but it wouldn't look as cool. So that's a sacrifice most people are willing to make. So this has got a 12-litre fuel tank, and it does 3.9 litres per 100 kilometres or 72 miles per gallon. Now those are the official figures, but up on the display it tells you what your miles per gallon is, and we've been getting 67. So that's not too bad of a drop, to be honest. You never get what the companies say that you'll get. It's always best possible conditions, but that's still really good miles per gallon. So this bike weighs 198 kilograms, and it doesn't feel heavy at all. It's quite light, easy to maneuver about. But again, as I said, it's quite small if you're a tall person, and the foot controls feel very cramped. So if you've got big feet, like size 10, size 11 feet, you feel like you're really sort of tucked up and you haven't got much space.
Now the mirrors are quite high and they're sort of about bar width, but me being quite high and bar width means that I can see about half the road behind me.
So this has got two modes. You've got road and you've got rain. A lot of bikes have numerous modes, and we're not normally a fan of modes. They're normally, they catch you out. So if you're in normal mode and you're going to sport, it's like jumping from a 250 to a 500 and suddenly it's a different animal and it catches you out. But with this bike, there's not a huge difference between the modes. Obviously you get more traction control in rain, but it was very well done. So we're a big fan of the modes on this bike. The exhaust sounds quite nice on this bike. It's a standard exhaust. It's got a good tone, and it does sound like a nice bike. I think if you had an aftermarket exhaust on it, it would really sound very nice. So I think there's a lot of potential with this engine to sound good. The side stand on this bike is very good. You put it in place, once it's on the side, you know it's there and it's not going to move about. A lot of side stands on different manufacturers, particularly Harleys, you put them on the side and then sometimes they dig into something and then they keep going. You don't know whether they're going to fall over or not, but that's not a problem with this bike.
Now the suspension on this bike, it's quite a firm ride, so when you do hit the bumps you do feel them a little bit, but it doesn't unsettle the bike, so it's perfectly fine.
The display is nice on this bike. You've got a normal analog speedo, which we are fans of. We don't like these electronic, futuristic ones. And then you've got a digital display on there as well. It tells you numerous different things that you'd expect it to tell you, miles per gallon, etc. Your RPMs, it tells you what gear you're in. It also tells you what mode you're in, but it's quite small when it tells you what mode you're in, so it would be better if it was a little bit bigger. if you struggle with your eyesight, you might find it a little bit hard to read. And while you're moving, you have to pull the clutch in to change the mode, which is good because it stops you from accidentally going into a different mode, but it can be a little bit frustrating when you definitely know you want to go into a mode and you have to pull the clutch in, and it takes a little bit of a few seconds, you know.
Now the brakes are very good, the front brake is very good, the rear brake's not so good. On its own, it doesn't give you masses of stopping power. You're not really supposed to use it on its own, but sometimes you need to. But combined with the front, it's perfectly good.